All right. Oops. Am I good to go?
No, not yet. Not yet. We're still going live. I just need to wait until it happens so that I can turn mute on so that I don't have the echo.
Got it.
Okay. We are live and
Okay.
now I'm going to open for all attendees.
Thanks, Patty.
My pleasure.
Hello and good evening. Welcome to the Schomburg Library and to tonight's program, Labor, Exploitation, and Trafficking. This is the last of a three-part series, Know Your Rights in the Workplace, presented by Michaela Garrido and her associate, Marina Burke of Legal Aid Society, Metropolitan Family Services. Many times when we hear the term human trafficking, we don't think of labor exploitation. However, trafficking exists in the United States in a wide variety of industries, often hidden in plain sight. In tonight's program, you will learn the legal definitions, indicators, and risk factors, remedies for people who have been in the situation, and how you can help in your own community. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Claudia Baranowski, and I am the ESL and the Literacy Coordinator at the Schomburg Library. And joining me tonight is my colleague, business librarian Patty Smolin. Our presenter, who I will introduce shortly, will pause periodically to answer questions. Please feel free to enter any questions or comments that you may have using either the Q&A buttons or the chat button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And if we have any viewers from watching on YouTube, please feel free to use the comments to enter any questions that you may have. And so now I would like to introduce tonight's presenter. As Legal Aid Society's outreach coordinator, Michaela Garrido coordinates and implements outreach, training, and community engagement activities for LAS. She has been with Legal Aid Society since 2014. She assists with cases involving a variety of issues such as crime victim advocacy, immigration, and labor issues. She is fluent in English and Tagalog. And now I'm turning it over to you, Michaela.
Thank you, Claudia. It's great to be back and to share more information about labor exploitation and labor trafficking. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully you're all seeing that PowerPoint. Again, this is the Human Trafficking Initiative. I am the outreach coordinator for the Human Trafficking Initiative, and this is our phone number and email so that you can get a hold of us. We are Legal Aid Society. We have been operating since 1886, providing free legal services on various matters in order to have this service available to everyone, regardless of ability to pay. So we want to be guided by the mantra that justice is for all. So this includes various issues regarding domestic violence, human trafficking, as we're going to talk tonight, wage theft and employment, and other matters. If you want to know more, please do check our website, www.laschicago.org. Now, we have services not only in Cook County, not only in the Chicagoland area, but in DuPage County as well. And in terms of our outreach for our human trafficking initiative, we are statewide. So we also have a community center for Metropolitan Family Services. Legal Aid Society is one of the services within that greater social services agency. Metropolitan Family Services provides a whole gamut of services, not just around empowerment, like legal aid society, but also economic stability, education, emotional wellness, and a whole other list of services. So please do visit the website as well. We have our main community center in DuPage and Wheaton, but we also have satellite offices around the DuPage County area. And like everyone else, both LAS and MFS in general are working remotely because of COVID, but we do have skeletal crews in our different offices, and we encourage everyone in the general public to please try to check out our website first or give us a call to start initiating those conversations so that we can help whoever needs help. Okay, so let's move on and talk about labor exploitation, labor trafficking. So let's talk first about human trafficking overall. We want to make sure that we all understand that it's happening everywhere. It's happening in the suburbs, it's happening in rural towns, it's happening in cities, it's happening in the US, outside the US, in Cook County, in DuPage County, and all around Illinois. It can happen to anyone, no matter what race, age, or gender. There's no one stereotype to who can be a survivor of human trafficking. So, what exactly is human trafficking? There are three elements to the definition of human trafficking. It's the number one, the exploitation of a person for the purpose of either compelled labor or a commercial sex act, and sometimes both, through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. So, when we talk about sex trafficking or the provision of commercial sex acts, this is where victims are manipulated or forced against their will to engage in sex acts for money or for anything else of value. So, not just money. It could be the promise to do something or not do something. It could be what we've been seeing recently with COVID is some solicitation to provide sex acts in exchange for you don't have to pay the rent this month if you do this for me. That kind of conversation. Now, the reason why we make a distinction between sex trafficking and labor trafficking is because there's actually an age factor. So we talk about the exploitation of a person for the purpose of compelled labor or commercial sex act through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. However, if we're talking about minors, anyone under 18 who's providing sex acts, we don't need to show that they were forced or coerced to do this. So that means anyone who's providing sex acts under 18 is already considered a victim or survivor of human trafficking for sex trafficking purposes if providing commercial sex acts. And thus, there's no such thing as juvenile prostitutes in the US because under federal law or state law, there is that age threshold. So every time there is someone who is a minor who's providing sex acts and they are recovered, they are not arrested. Rather, they are referred out to social services or any other assistance they may need in order to break away from that situation where they have to provide sex acts. So that's a distinction. That's why we're making this distinction between sex and labor trafficking. It's also the industries for the most part, but for labor trafficking, we have to show that there is this form of force, fraud, or coercion, whether minor or adult. And so for forced labor or domestic servitude, which are examples of labor trafficking, oftentimes these individuals are made to work for little to no pay. They're working in not in legitimate industries, not illicit industries, unlike in sex trafficking for the most part. So they're working in legitimate industries, usually, and then very often they're forced to provide their services in situations or for products that we actually use and consume every day. And then there's also this component involving domestic servitude. It becomes a situation of servitude because these are domestic workers who are hidden in plain sight, who are forced to work in homes across the US as nannies, maids, domestic help, caregivers. And the reason why it becomes a labor trafficking issue or labor exploitation issue is because of the kind of treatment, the violation of their rights, that makes it a trafficking situation. So, as I mentioned, a variety of industries where human trafficking can happen, both illicit industries and legitimate industries. What makes it a little difficult to determine whether a situation might be a labor trafficking situation is because many times this happens in legitimate industries. Again, for the most part, let's think about what human trafficking is. At the root of it, at the core, it's about the exploitation of a person. There's a there is a controller, a trafficker, an abuser who wants to make the most out of this situation to make some kind of economic gain for their benefit, thereby violating the rights and abusing other people for that economic gain. So, you know, this is not necessarily geographically indicative of where trafficking has happened. For the most part, all of these industries, this is not an exhaustive list. Again, it can happen in any industry as long as you've got a trafficker who wants to take advantage of others. But these are industries that we've seen human trafficking to happen in a variety of states, including Illinois, not just in massage parlors or prostitution or child sexual exploitation. It's happened in the restaurant industry, nail and hair salons, hotel industry, hair braiding, all these other places that we normally wouldn't think that human trafficking might actually happen. So, one way that we can try and figure out if something might be happening is to determine that number one, are there any rights being violated? Number two, how much of them are related to the violation of criminal laws, civil laws, labor laws? That's one way that we can look into it. What this research did, so there was this research conducted by the Urban Institute in partnership with Northeastern University that they published in 2014, where they interviewed a number of labor trafficked survivors to talk about and see if there were any patterns and trends in their exploitation that eventually, would help us see and guide us to see if there's a way we can uh, somehow be assisted in order to understand if a labor exploitation trafficking situation is happening. Because again, human trafficking is an invisible crime. It's beneath the surface. It's a hidden crime, and so much of what happens is actually beneath the surface. But this is how they teased it out. For the folks that they had interviewed, over 100 people, over 100 survivors they had interviewed, over 90% experienced 8 or more forms of a violation of their rights in this list. So this spectrum of labor violations, okay? And 94% were aware they were being abused. However, it's not easy to tell someone to leave a situation, an employment situation, or an abusive situation just like that. There are many reasons why a survivor will not leave a situation, even if they are aware that they are being abused. In a labor context, sometimes it's because they're still owed money. They're holding onto hope that maybe they will be paid the wages they're owed in the next month. Sometimes the controller or the trafficker will even make those promises, or the controller or trafficker is holding on to the workers, documents or possessions. So there are many reasons why someone won't leave even if they're aware that they're being abused. And that's not that doesn't make them any less of a a victim in the eyes of the law. You know, you don't need to leave a situation to say that you were a victim of a crime or that your rights have been violated. So if you look at this list, one indication that we can definitely determine that there are rights being violated is, let's look to our state laws. Let's look to our federal laws around labor. You know, from less pay than what they were initially promised, you know, for the kind of work that they're doing, or they withheld pay from the worker's paycheck. They were paid less than the minimum wage. Pay was actually denied. There were illegal deductions. Again, deductions under state and federal law are allowed only under certain conditions, covering certain things. And so if that is not followed, then those would be illegal deductions. And for the most part, there are many things that are charged to a worker that shouldn't be charged to a worker. And especially if it's in line with the work that they're doing. If it's, you know, the boots they need to wear to do the work that they need to do, technically, you know, those are not deductions that should be made, except under certain circumstances. Perhaps, consent was obtained, written consent from the worker. But again, for the most part, those should not be happening. Uh, Employers should be giving written earnings statement, like a paycheck statement. Meal breaks. There are state and federal requirements and laws around meal breaks, access to OSHA regulations, occupational safety and health under the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, around ensuring the safety and health of the worker, access to safe water, clean drinking water, toilets, a safe work environment. So, you know, how about their movements? Are workers' movements extremely controlled? Are they restricted in a way where it's already unreasonable? And is the control of the movements of the worker, does it extend even beyond the workplace? Does it extend? So some workers have been monitored or controlled even when they're on their break or done with their workday and they're headed home. So those are some examples. And then, you know, it goes all the way down to actual physical. There's an actual physical assault or violence or the threats of that. So one more thing I want to bring up is immigration. Immigration status has always been a powerful form of control, and that's what this research has shown to be as well. So these are actually manifestations of how force, fraud, or coercion can manifest in the workplace in this fashion. So we do have a national human trafficking hotline. It's 1-888-3737-888. This national hotline is available 24/7. They've been in existence since 2007. And so they do have a whole bunch of data that's really useful for us to know about. Last year, which is their latest data, 2019, this is how many identified situations have been in the US, with almost 900 contacts in Illinois that led to almost 300 cases of trafficking just for last year. And then in the aggregate for Illinois, 6,578 contacts that led to 2,057 victims exhibiting high indicators. Again, if you're thinking of something like a spectrum or a list where there are more boxes being ticked than high indicators, and then 1,980 with moderate indicators. And then consistently, so this is important, consistently, the number one source of calls were the community members. That's why we do these kinds of presentations, because again, human trafficking is a hidden crime. So much of what's happening is beneath the surface and we don't really see or know. We think that things are okay when they actually aren't. So the more awareness we do like this, the more people know, the more aware we are. And it's not just the community members. The second source of calls were the survivors of trafficking themselves. And then you have other sources such as the family of the survivor and then the victims of other crimes. So again, thinking about how human trafficking tends to happen within the context of all these other crimes happening because all these other rights are being violated together with the actual crime of trafficking being committed against that person. So, and then nonprofit service providers as a source of calls. More data that I think would help us be indicative of labor trafficking, but also help us think about what the labor trafficking, how labor trafficking can play out from inception or recruitment through the end. What are the top 5 recruitment tactics for labor trafficking? It's that job offer or advertisement where lies or misrepresentations might have been done in the beginning, which most often is the case, and then they end up in a trafficking situation. Not things weren't or did not play out as they were promised. And then, yeah, false promises or fraud, smuggling related. So this one I want to highlight. And this is in relation to that immigration status as a powerful form of control. When we talk about smuggling, we're talking about the movement of individuals across borders. This may be a violation of immigration laws. But that being said, human trafficking is the exploitation of a person, and it's not a crime against borders. So human trafficking happens to people and not a crime against borders, which means that just because someone might have been promised that they will be helped to cross borders does not negate their status as a survivor of human trafficking. And fine, we have our immigration laws, but our immigration laws were never created or are not meant to be used or abused in order to perpetuate a crime. So, despite how someone may have come in uh, to the country or through borders or whatnot, if they are in a situation of human trafficking, hopefully there's enough of an understanding that maybe there might have been a smuggling connection to that human trafficking result. But again, that will not negate the status as a survivor of human trafficking and thus eligible for help. And what we want to do is make sure that people understand that they can get away from the situation no matter what their status. So I keep on harping on that because immigration has always been a powerful form of control, and not everyone who comes through our borders are necessarily undocumented. Not everyone who's become a survivor of human trafficking is necessarily undocumented, but there's still that component. And then you've got family, human trafficking through family, and then someone who's posing as a benefactor. And then the top 5 forms of force, fraud, and control, as we had mentioned in that spectrum we looked at a while ago. We talked about the withholding of pay, excessive working hours, the threat to report to immigration again, because we do have folks who are, they have various visas, work visas, or, they might have a visa that is tied to the employer through a J1 or all these other visas. So that threat to report to immigration again, not meant to be used to perpetrate a crime of human trafficking. Verbal abuse, and then withholding or denying the needs of a person. If we think about it, if you've got your think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and think about basic needs of any person: food, clothing, and shelter. If someone is able to manipulate or control access to basic needs, that's an easy way to really impose this force, fraud, or coercive atmosphere in order to really exploit someone. So more data, just interesting stuff. The top 3 identified labor trafficking types, and we do see sex trafficking, but we'll hone in on labor trafficking for now. You've got domestic work, the agricultural sector, and then traveling sales crews. And then we do have that intersection of both sex and labor trafficking where both may be happening in the same industry. at the same time, even illicit massage, health and beauty, like massage parlors, spas, nail salons, illicit activities, and bars, strip clubs, and cantinas. And then let's think about the points of access for help. Again, the general community as the source of the hotline calls. You've got the friends or family, law enforcement themselves when they do recovery operations, or when someone is given them has given them a tip, or has reported to them. Health services, because when people are abused for economic gain, there will be some form of damage, either physically, emotionally, psychologically, and health services will come in one way or another in order to get help workers be able to do the job again. And many times it has happened where a trafficker will let the worker, or will let the individual go see the help, either an emergency room or community health clinic, to get better, even if it's just minimally, in order to go back to work. And then mobile apps or social media, again, in this day and age of COVID, and those remote ways to access is really, really important nowadays. And then the child welfare system in general. And then we lastly see the top risk factors or vulnerabilities for trafficking. Again, thinking about that immigration status, whether because of work visa or any kind of visa, or undocumented immigration status. When someone isn't a green card holder or a citizen, it's so easy to threaten using immigration. Unstable housing, criminal record, criminal history, physical health concerns, and substance abuse concerns. And so I'm going to stop there for a moment and see if there are any questions. Okay, so it looks like we don't have any questions. So
Mika, I might be this is Patty. I might be
Sure.
jumping the gun here for a moment, but online predators in this way. I'm interested to know, and this is my question, not an audience question. The lure and how it comes on
Yes.
strong and overly sweet and inviting, and it does a 180.
Oh, yes, definitely. As you pointed out, through social media, or uh, Snapchat, or I'm trying to think, platforms, technology platforms, where recruitment happens, showing up in both sex trafficking and labor trafficking, really. And how a lot of people, especially, I think in economic situations like we have right now with COVID, a lot of people are looking for jobs, and sometimes the job postings out there, or the promises made in those postings, are false. And it's hard to determine whether they're false or not, but sometimes there are enough indicators to show that, I don't know if this is if this is legitimate. But there have definitely been online predators recruiting for sex or labor on Facebook, even through newspaper ads, and then through places like, I'm trying to think, WeChat or Weibo, or other Twitter, really, those kinds of spaces. So
would you encourage then, if someone was not certain if something was posted online or in print that was an invitation to a job that they weren't sure was credible, to not be embarrassed about asking, ask a trusted person, even perhaps ask your organization, just give a quick call and just say, is this legitimate? I know that periodically we receive at the reference desk questions from individuals that receive mailings. And we can just point out certain things and inconsistencies on a site or in a mailing that someone should be aware of. But I would really recommend, no one wants to necessarily run to the police with it. However, it is really important, if you feel in your gut it's worth questioning before you pursue it, to ask someone in a trusted entity or relationship.
Definitely. And there have been enough fraudulent activity that's been going on that even the Illinois Attorney General has a hotline to report for consumer fraud, or for these kinds of cases where there's a lot of that's already criminal activity. So through the IAG, if they don't want to do if they don't want to do a report through their local police stations, and again, yeah, like folks like us, and we're happy to help out if people want an advocate to send along that message and don't really want to be associated with the report. That's one thing that we can definitely do.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. So when we think about human trafficking indicators, it's important to think that this isn't exhaustive. This isn't necessarily, if we find this indicator to be present in the situation we're assessing, it doesn't necessarily automatically mean that there's a human trafficking situation. But it's always good to just have that general idea. Again, thinking about the awareness, the awareness that we need in our community in order to really weed out this crime, because it's a hidden crime. And at the same time, we don't ask community members to be 100% sure that there's a labor exploitation or labor trafficking situation that's going on. You don't need to be 100% accurate or 100% sure about this happening. That's not on you to make that this determination. We just want the community to understand enough in order to connect with someone, and that's why we have folks like the National Human Trafficking Hotline, and folks like us, where anyone can call and just we can talk about it, or we can if there's really something going on, then we can help push along that report out to start an investigation or to assist someone or whatever, what have you. So that said, it's always good to think about the physical manifestations or indicators and the general surrounding circumstances that a human trafficking survivor might be in order to see that yes, these are proof that force, fraud, or coercion was exerted on that individual. So we want to think about labor exploitation, labor trafficking happened because there's a violation of rights around the workplace setup, because their rights to a safe and healthy workplace are not present, or they're being asked, or they're being made to work long hours, or they're being made to work without pay, or they're being made to work as much as they can while they can, right? Again, that whole idea of exploitation for economic gain. And so what would that result in? That would result in someone having a workplace injury or chronic pain, malnourishment. I think we want to kind of categorize that more around thinking again about that denial of needs, the manipulation of someone's basic needs, food, clothing, and shelter. And so malnourishment is one big one there. I just put that as an example because one instance that I had an experience I had conducting outreach with folks who were homeless and were living in a place where it wasn't meant to be a place to stay or live in, but they were there, and they worked in the restaurant industry. But despite working in the restaurant industry, the first thing they would ask us every time we would visit was, "Do you have any food for us? We're really, really hungry." And again, an indicator that their basic needs weren't being met. And why was that? Because instead of being paid the minimum wage, they were only being paid $1 an hour, and they weren't being allowed to eat the food that they were cooking in that restaurant. So that's just an example. Again, the basic needs, if we want to think of it that way. And then bruises, scars, or signs of physical abuse or torture. So, or even improperly healed old wounds might be an indicator too, not just of a previous workplace injury, but also possible abuse. And then the work conditions. Again, thinking about the violation of labor laws or labor regulations, and possibly criminal or civil laws. So anyone who's working excessively long or unusual hours without break, again, in the state of Illinois, if someone's working 7.5 hours a day, they need to have at least a 20-minute break by the fifth hour of the workday. So things like that. And then you've got the seventh day rest. Rest day in 7 days act. So it's someone should be given a mandatory rest day after working a week. And then someone who's not allowed breaks or suffers under unusual restrictions at work. Again, the controlled movements of a worker or an individual. Um, are they being monitored? Um, you know, maybe through a GPS, or their movements being monitored, where they're going, or what they're doing, or who they're seeing, even outside of their workplace. Those could be pretty problematic signs. And then again, the recruitment, false promises regarding the nature and conditions of the work, and then owing a large debt. So many times, for individuals who are recruited into a work situation, they're recruited either, and told, oh, now that you're working with us, you actually owe this much for whatever reason. Or they're told, well, if you want to leave us, then you have to pay this much in order to compensate for how much time we've trained you, or something to that effect. So again, that kind of debt. And then unpaid, paid very, very little, or paid only through tips. Again, as we had talked about last week, whether tipped or non-tipped workers, we do have a minimum wage requirement for the most part. We do have exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, we have that mandatory minimum wage requirement. So that needs to be met. If they're paid only through tips, uh, we have to see, is it meeting the minimum wage requirement, or what's going on? So lastly, lack of control. Does the person have control over their own stuff, their own money, their own basic needs, or not? Is it controlled by someone else? So someone who maybe, not just few or no personal possessions, but do they have the right things they need according to the weather or according to the work that they do? Now it's getting cold. Do they have, if they work outdoors or things like that, do they have the right clothing? Not in control of their own money, records, or bank account. If they're being paid through a bank account, is it in their name, or is it in a joint account, or are they able to get the money anytime they want? Every time they get a paycheck, do they have to pay back some of that money to the employer or to someone else? What is the payment structure? Are they actually getting what they're owed, and they're actually in control of that money? Are they in control of their own IDs, their own identification documents? There have been times where a controller or a trafficker or an employer will take these supposedly for safekeeping, or sometimes it's because it's required by the business facility or by the establishment, when that shouldn't be the case. And then they're unable to speak for themselves. So someone else is speaking on their behalf, supposedly because they can't articulate themselves very well, or they don't really know what's going on. So that kind of lack of control. And then high security measures in the work or living location. So again, that control, that shows a lack of freedom of movement. So there have been cases where workers were housed in the same living facility that was filled with chicken wire and sometimes guard dogs, or if not that kind of physical security measure, their movements are being controlled or monitored through their cell phone, and things like that. Here's another way that we can figure out if there's any labor issues that might be going on, that a right has been violated. To ask folks some of these questions around labor, around the respect of their labor rights. And again, for the most part, um, people think that labor rights are connected to immigration status, and that's never the case. Those are separate and distinct issues, and everyone is entitled to be paid for the work that they do. So here are some questions that we can ask if the person is being paid the wage that they were promised. Are there a lot of deductions from their pay? Were they charged a fee to come to work, or charged a fee to terminate their employment? Um, do they owe a large debt that seems unreachable? Have any of their documents been taken away from them? And has someone threatened to report to immigration? So this is our intake line, 312-986-4105. We're open Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. We also have a WhatsApp number. So to call or text us through that number, 312-579-7043. We do have a Spanish Workers' Rights Facebook page if anyone wants to join that. And then you can also reach us through this email, trafficking@metrofamily.org. We also have a Google document that the link is going to be shared with this video, that we encourage people to fill out, so that we can call you when it's convenient for you, and if there are any specifics you want to share about a question you may have. We also have these calendars that are free. These are informational calendars that are Spanish English bilingual. We encourage people to take these, write down the days and hours work and any other work matters, your break times, the paycheck, when got paid, how much you're paid, any other concerns regarding work. It's always good to have some kind of documentation around work, around the hours worked. This calendar is also full of information that may be helpful, from labor rights to how to get a driver's license, public benefits, taxes, how to file for taxes, and free places to get your taxes done. And these are calendars that are available and free at the Schomburg Library, but also we're happy to keep replenishing if people need more of these. So we'll keep bringing these out to the library if needed. And that's all I have for you today. If there are any questions, please feel free to connect with us. I wonder if we have any final questions.
I
stop sharing.
Oh, thank you so much. Whoops. Thank you so much for that presentation. I didn't see any questions come in through chat, but one of the things that struck me as you were talking, when you were speaking about these type of things that are hidden in plain sight, like to domestic workers, and so or domestic servitude. I think a question I have is, if somebody is offered a job, and I mean, is it too simplistic to say that if it sounds too good to be true, that it is? I mean, how do these job advertisements capture somebody? Is it the possibility of living in the United States or making X amount of money, or what is it that
Yeah, and that's really the case. Sometimes it's not too good to be true. Sometimes it looks completely legitimate and above board, and has gone through all the hoops and looks really valid. And it's only after being in the situation for a while that the worker will realize that this isn't right. And that's why, in many ways, even if we say, you want to be wary of those job postings, for the most part, some of them are still, they still go through, because they're they look fine. They're great, Some of the cases that have involved traveling sales crews, the recruitment happened through Facebook, and they were primarily they were targeting a specific audience. It was students out for the summer. And so the posting was, work in the summer, have fun, travel around. Some of the postings that were flagged on Facebook showed pictures of money strewn, like that kind of photo. It was like, meh,
Right. Mm-hmm.
But if you're someone who's, I don't know, 18 or 16 and off for the summer, and this is what you see, and it says that, have fun in the summer, going around making money,
Sure.
And traveling. I mean, I wouldn't blame anyone for clicking on that and saying, yeah, I'm interested.
Right.
And so if it sounds good to be true, it most likely is, but for many of the folks who end up in trafficking situations, it didn't even sound fake.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I knew it had to be, more than just, just like such an exciting offer that was too good to pass up. I know it has to be more convincing than that. So.
Oh yeah. And especially when you're thinking about some of the when the lies and misrepresentations are so good that the recruiter, some of the con acts, where the recruiter makes it appear that yes, they are filing for the right papers. It looks very official in the eyes of the person being recruited, or the the one who eventually gets trafficked. So it's really tricky. And that's why we also say in human trafficking, we assess the human trafficking situation from the eyes of the person who is trafficked. So not what is reality, but how the trafficker, again, thinking about that force, fraud, and coercion, how the trafficker made an impression enough on the individual or the worker or the person that this was reality. So not objective reality, subjective reality. There have been cases where a trafficker told the person that they were abusing, all law enforcement are my friends. If you see anyone coming down the street in a uniform, that's my friend. We are all watching you. I own the entire whatever. I own the entire state of Illinois. That kind of control and psychological control is really the most difficult chain to break in a trafficking situation, because
it sounds like it. Yes, right. Especially if their immigration status is in question and they're just in fear. So, okay. I don't think I have one last call for questions, but I haven't seen anything that came in. But I appreciate so much the time.
You're welcome.
That you spent with us, joining us with all three presentations. They were wonderful. And so for any viewers, please feel free to check out SchaumburgLibrary.tv, our YouTube channel, for the previous two sessions on health and safety and COVID in the workplace during COVID and the right to fair pay. I think that's all that we have. I'd like to thank you again, Michaela, for joining us.
Thank you, Claudia. This was great. I really appreciate how the library is helping us get the word out and talk about the services and also connect us. You're all a fantastic connector.
Thank you.
So
thank you.
Thank you.
Well, with this, I bid you all a good night and have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, ladies.